Jaylen Brown is the most important player on the Boston Celtics. Over the years, Jayson Tatum has always been known to be the best player on the Celtics. And while that is true, I actually consider Jaylen Brown to be the most important player on the Celtics. Not the best, but the most important. Now, a lot of times people think when you talk about the most important player on a team, you're always talking about the best player. And a lot of times that does turn out to be true, but in this specific case with the Boston Celtics, I actually think Jaylen Brown is even more important for the Celtics than Jayson Tatum is. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicySports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Jaylen Brown was drafted with the number 3 overall selection during the 2016 NBA draft by the Boston Celtics. And originally when Brown was being drafted, he was already seen as an extremely talented young player. And although in his rookie season he didn't have the best year, Jaylen did a phenomenal job at consistently improving his game season after season until eventually turning into the player that we all know and love at this point. And I mentioned this in a lot of my videos, but whenever you talk about younger players that you draft, what you want to see from those guys is just consistent improvement season after season, because obviously not every player is going to be like Zion Williamson or a similar player to that in the sense where they're going to be extremely good right away. Most players take some time to fully live up to their potential, and when you look at Jaylen Brown, it's pretty clear that he's one of those players. But at this point, I think most people would agree that Jaylen Brown is an extremely talented young player, and he's certainly an all-star caliber guy that has the potential to put up 25 plus on any given night at this point. But when you look at the Boston Celtics roster and you realize they also have Jayson Tatum on their team, who's one of the best players in the NBA period in my opinion, the question is, why would I ever consider Jaylen Brown to be the most important player on the Celtics when they have Tatum? Well, I think Brown is the most important player on this team for a couple different reasons, but the first reason that I want to touch upon is his defense. Now, obviously when you look at the Celtics roster, they have a lot of really good individual defenders. You talk about Jayson Tatum, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, alongside with a bunch of others. But when you talk about the best defensive player on this roster, I do actually think it's Jaylen Brown. What Jaylen is able to do defensively is just incredible. He does a phenomenal job at playing on-ball defense on the opposing team's best player each and every night, but also does a really nice job at playing off-ball defense as well. A lot of times when you talk about really good defenders in the NBA, either they're really good individual defenders or they're really good off-ball defenders. But when you talk about Jaylen Brown, he does a really nice job at doing both. He can play off ball, get in the passing lanes and get some steals that way. He can play really well defensively on ball on the opposing team's best player, and overall he's just an extremely valuable defensive player. And a huge reason for why that's so valuable is Jaylen is going to do as good of a job as you possibly could on the opposing team's best player each and every night. So even if your team, in the Boston Celtics in this case, aren't playing all that well offensively, just having a guy like Jaylen on your roster that's so good defensively really helps you out in those type of situations. But if the Celtics are rolling offensively and Jaylen is doing his thing defensively, then you can just imagine how important a player like Jaylen would be to the Celtics roster. And when you look at these playoffs so far, it's pretty clear that Jaylen's defense has certainly played a role in the success that the Celtics have had so far. Now, the next reason that I want to touch upon is his offensive ability. Now, when you look at Jaylen's overall offensive ability, it's pretty clear that his offensive game is very diverse. When you talk about his three-point shooting ability, it's pretty good at this point, I would say. He has a nice ability to hit that catch and shoot three-point jump shot, has a nice ability to cross over, sidestep, or even step back from that three-point range, and I would say overall from that three-point area, he's not necessarily a complete automatic shooter, but I would say he's a pretty good shooter at this point and is only getting better. Now, in terms of his mid-range game, this is certainly the best aspect of his game. He has a really nice ability to hit that one dribble pull-up from that mid-range. He has a really nice ability to hit that post turnaround fadeaway, crossover, sidestep, and step back, and even has that catch and shoot mid-range jump shot as well. From that mid-range area, Jaylen Brown is basically automatic. But now talking about his driving and finishing ability, this is also an aspect of Jaylen's game that's very, very good and very difficult to stop. Jaylen does a phenomenal job at utilizing both his strength and athleticism to finish around the basket. He does a great job at finishing around the basket with crafty layups, either his left or right hand, also has a phenomenal ability to finish through contact with and-one finishes, and even has a really nice ability to dunk over players at will with that great athleticism that he does possess. Jaylen also has a really nice floater within his game, and when you look at his offensive scoring ability overall from top to bottom, from all three levels, it's pretty clear that he's an extremely talented player. But now, obviously Jaylen Brown is an extremely talented scorer, but at this point everybody already knew that. Why does that make him the most important player on this roster? Well, I think whenever you can add sophisticated scorers to your roster, which Jaylen Brown clearly is, that's always going to be important. But when you talk about Jaylen specifically, I think he's even better than that. He's a guy that can put up 30 plus on any given night, even in the playoffs. So the reason why that's so important is because when both Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are playing really well, the Celtics are basically impossible to defeat. But if Jayson Tatum isn't having the best game, which sometimes happens in inopportune times like the playoffs, Jaylen Brown could then pick up the scoring slack and still win the game for the Celtics. And we saw this exact scenario happen in game 2, where Jayson Tatum had a nightmare scoring night, but Jaylen Brown was able to really do a nice job at picking up the scoring load himself and doing a nice job at helping his team in the Celtics win a critical game 2 that they had to have. Now, the last reason that I want to touch upon for why I think Jaylen Brown is the most important player on this roster is due to his passing and playmaking ability. Now, Jaylen isn't necessarily a guy that's going to facilitate for your team for an entire 48 minutes, but with that being said, he does have the ability to do so in certain spurts, and he especially has a really nice ability to do so when he gets really hot individually offensively. Because when he starts to get doubled or even triple teamed, he does a really nice job at finding the open man and getting them easy looks, either from that 3-point range, cutting all the way to the basket for a wide open dunk or layup, or just in general finding the open guy. And having that sort of ability really just makes everybody out there that much better. Even if you individually aren't having a great scoring night, having that ability to find the open guy offensively is just such a valuable asset that you have to have, in my opinion, for any really good player, especially for any guy who's considered the best player or one of the best players on a team. And when you look at Jaylen Brown, it's pretty clear that he does have that ability. So I think when you look from top to bottom, I think Jaylen is an extremely talented player, and I also think he's the most important player to the Celtics roster. And going forward throughout the rest of these playoffs, I do think the Celtics are going to be very successful. I do see the Celtics beating the Philadelphia 76ers in this round, taking them to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think whatever team they do play, whether you're talking about the Knicks or the Heat, I do think the Celtics would be the favorites for sure, and I do think they would definitely have the ability to beat either team. And in a finals matchup versus really whoever comes out of the West, I also think the Celtics have a really good chance to beat that team as well, and we could be talking about the NBA champions this season in the Boston Celtics. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening for the Celtics, not only throughout the rest of these playoffs, but also in the future as a whole. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Jaylen Brown is the most important player on the Celtics, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.